Welcome to the Community Spotlight podcast. My guest today is Crawford from the Crawford Soil and Water Conservation District is Mike Hall. Welcome back, Mike.
Thank you. Good morning, Dave. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, and
Fantastic.
as I mentioned before, we talked a little prior to this pre-recording. You know, it's kind of like old times. You and I go back to the old
Yeah,
Spotlight
it's been a
show.
while.
And it's a pretty scary experience when you get the two of us together.
Can be.
Yeah, it can be, can't it? But it will be an informative time
Yes.
because today we're going to talk about, obviously, the Crawford Soil and Water Conservation District. And, you know, I got to thinking about your mission, and I was looking at your mission statement on your site, and I'm going to read it verbatim. It says, it's to encourage and assist the people of Crawford County in making decisions for the wise use of our natural resources and to provide an quality environment for all.
Correct.
Now, boy, that's a great mandate if we think about that, because, you know, we think about wise use of our natural resources because that's something you just can't mess up.
Right.
If you mess that up, you got big
Yeah,
problems.
we got a lot of issues if that happens. Correct.
Yes.
And we need to do the best we can for the future generations, and then hopefully they'll do the same thing, and we can perpetuate this thing
Right.
into eternity.
Well,
That's the goal.
I respect your work. You know that.
Thank you.
I've had you on here for, like I said, gone back to what I call it the olden days.
Right.
But at any rate, there's always issues and things I know we talk about that come up. Now, I know one of the things that you wanted to talk about today was stormwater management.
Right. So it's kind of interesting. So that when you mentioned that mission statement, you know, that says for all Crawford County residents, for all generations into the future. And, you know, sometimes we get caught up in that, or our office can get caught up in that bucket of working with the rural landowners, agricultural farmers, and
For
things.
everybody.
And we don't. We try and spread that out. So, you know, we do have a lot of urban backyard conservation stuff that we do, you know, with birds and bird feeders and wildlife in your backyard,
Right.
and gardening and fertilizers and you know, managing your yards and things like that. And that's what we were going to talk about today was, you know, that backyard management. What do we do? Stormwater is a big contributor of contaminants into our rivers and streams. You know, a lot of people think that, like for instance here in Bucyrus, that if it goes into that storm grate in the street, that goes, well, it goes like everything else, goes to the treatment plant, gets treated, and then it gets put into the rivers. You know, those grates, you know, we have separated stormwater and that's what that means is that stormwater separated, that goes straight to the creek. It goes wherever that creek goes in Crawford County, most generally it goes into a creek, into a larger stream to the Sandusky River to Lake Erie. Yeah. So, you know, when we think about it from that perspective, you know, hopefully that changes people's minds and thinks, okay, those grates out there are important.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and this time of year, you know, we get a lot of leaves. You know, and people say, well, how are leaves? You know, leaves are natural, happens in the woods all the time. The problem is that leaves aren't necessarily a nutrient issue, but they can be a drainage issue.
Yes.
If those grates are covered up by leaf piles or whatever, that you don't get the drainage that you need, and you have other issues or problems potentially coming up. We get into fall. What comes after fall is winter, frozen ground. So if those drains aren't working properly, we get a little skim of ice, first freeze up, and now you've got an issue with some hazardous, sidewalks or whatever happens to be out there.
Yes.
So, you know, the idea is in the fall, one of the big things I remind people first and foremost is when you pile your leaves, if you have leaves, keep them away from the storm drains. Let those storm drains function and work like they're supposed to. That's the first thing. You know, the leaves going down there, I'm not too concerned about that because, like I said, that happens all the time. But the idea is to keep those drains functioning as a drain.
Well, you got to have that flow going through that drain.
Right.
If you get any kind of stoppage in there, you're going to have an issue. That's where, if you're a city resident or tend to be one, then you have people getting flooded basements and they wonder, well, this might contribute to that because if you stop that up and this water backs up, you have many, many issues that can come out of this, as you pointed out. But I think what we just got into is very, very important because conservation is everybody's business. This is just not a rural issue. And when you and I are on here, some people might say, well, this is more like for farmers. No, it's not.
Right. That's kind of what we've
for
tried
everyone.
to change here in the last several years as well, quite a few years now.
Right.
Is that one of the other things that we like to talk about with that stormwater, we get into fertility, and just like I like to think of people that have backyards that they don't do a lot of conservation in. Either they're growing grass back there, maybe they're growing flowers or trees or a garden, vegetable garden. All that stuff takes fertility, and you have to use that fertility wisely as well. If you're going to fertilize and do things, you have to just because you're on a half-acre lot or a quarter-acre lot or smaller than that, doesn't mean that you don't. Fertility is fertility. That plant sitting in your backyard takes the same amount of fertility as the same plant sitting in a 40-acre field. So when we look at that across the scheme, it might not be that big of a deal, but there are several backyards in a community, and we've been really encouraging a lot of that fertility management in the backyards. And everybody wants green grass, everybody wants weed-free grass, and right now what's everybody doing? It's weed and feed, it's full-time weed and feed. So they're feeding, but most of the time what they're doing is they're doing that for, to control the weeds.
Yes.
The fertility is just being thrown on because that's a carrier with the weeds. So Mike's recommendation is let's take a fertilizer or a soil test. Maybe you don't even need that you could easily put down some herbicides to control the weeds, which is you're already doing anyway. Save yourself the money on the fertilizer that you really don't need, and find out that maybe every other year, every third year, you need to put the fertilizer out there. So you're saving, that's a 60% savings basically on your fertilizer bill. So just those kind of things to think about. Soil test is going to cost you $20. So it's a pretty simple thing. If you have a garden, that's a whole different ballgame. I mean, we can really narrow down some things, on fertility in a garden. If you're trying to grow vegetables or whatever, that's a great way to utilize that fertility is in that soil is to grow food.
Well, you've opened the door to this. If I want a soil test, what's the easiest way? How do I get one of those
So
done?
you want a soil test according to, like if you're in your yard, you want to soil test your yard. If you have your garden, you want to soil test your garden. You don't want to mix the two. So,
Okay.
So let's say you have a garden. You want to, a lot of people go out, they dig with a shovel. It's not an exact science, so we have to understand that. So how do we make an exact science more, or inexact science more exact?
More accurate.
We take tons of samples. So the more samples that you can take, the better. So what I call them is plugs. So let's say you have a 20 by 20 garden. If you can take 15 little, I don't care if you're using a trowel or whatever you're using, take 20 of them from different locations in that 20 by 20 garden area, put them into a plastic bucket, not a metal bucket. Metal will throw off different tests. Put it in a plastic bucket. Mix those 20 samples all up, mush it together with your hands or whatever, and then pull one sample out of that, and that's going to be a representative sample of the whole garden from several different spots.
I wondered how they did that.
It's the way the farmers do it. I mean, so they go out and we used to do it we used to recommend 20-acre grids. This is back in the day. We used to rent one soil test for every 20 acres. Now we're down to, most guys are doing, if not 5-acre grids, they're doing 2-acre grids, and some people are even doing half-acre grids. So,
Wow.
They're talking on a 40-acre field. They're taking 80 soil samples every 2 years, and they're analyzing it, and that's what they're adjusting their soils with and fertilities with. And you find out that you end up saving a lot of money. You can do that with your gardens, and you can do that with your soil, or with your lawns. I mean, if you've got tons of phosphorus and potash out there, why are you putting it on there? Because once the soil is super saturated, it can't hold anymore. Every rain event, where's it go? To our storm drains, into the streams, into the rivers. And again, like I said, it does not go to the treatment plant to get filtered out. So, if it's not needed, I mean, it's just like sugar and salt in water. I mean, you can only put so much sugar and salt in there before it will not, unless you heat it up, it doesn't absorb into the water. It will not dissolve into the water. So the soil is the same way. It can only hold so much. And once it washes away. And then
So you and I have a tendency to segue into a lot of things, and then it turns out into being an interesting conversation.
yes.
But like I said, conservation, whether you're a farm or city dweller or whatever you want to say, rural farm, conservation is everybody's business, and it's water, soil, air, and all. I mean,
wildlife, plants. Yep.
yes, this is all tied our a whole ecosystem, and so the more we can. As we have these programs, we'll talk more and more as we do these, about this, because we want people to understand these are not just agricultural issues.
Right.
These are this is residential. Everybody plays a part in this. And like I said, you mess the soil up, you mess the water up, you got some big problems.
Right. Well, for the longest time, we pull our drinking water out of the Sandusky River.
Yes.
Now it goes into a big settling tank called the reservoir, but that's where we get our drinking water. So, we can't really mess that up, The other things we talk about with stormwater, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention these, would be, we're coming up into winter. Salts are a big issue. Some of these salts now have chemicals in them for different reasons and things like that. Make them more efficient, less use, which is great. But just understand that wherever that salt that is, make sure that you're using it in proper amounts. And only where it's needed. If it's laying on bare concrete or bare asphalt and we get a rain or a melt, it's going straight to the storm drains. And then that's going straight, any chemical, salt, anything like that's going straight there. Same with, this is a common thing. I know a lot of people don't do this in the winter, but if you're changing your oil or you got maybe you've got a leaking, antifreeze or something like that, or household chemicals, if those are on the driveway and stuff like that, try and clean them up. Because the first rain and flush, that goes straight to the creeks and rivers. And if you might think, oh, that little 10-inch by 10-inch spot on my driveway is not that big of a deal. Look down your street.
Yeah.
If there's every driveway, count the number of driveways that are out there, and then pretty soon you can see how that adds up pretty quickly. So, it a little bit goes a long way, and we're all in it together, kind of thing. So.
Yes. Now I'm going to segue into something else, and I think we go. The photo contest.
Yes.
That's ongoing, correct?
Yeah, we have photo contests going on right now. So we're trying to hit. We did this several years ago and it was pretty successful. So what we're doing is we're asking. We have different categories on there, and we're trying to get all 4 seasons. So we got a long way to go yet on this. So bear with us.
Yes.
But so we have our fall season now. We'll have our winter season, spring, and then summer. And there's different categories, and there's. I think our focus this year is trees. So we're focusing on trees, which is, can be in an agricultural environment, urban, natural environment, whatever. But those will be, you can submit your photos to us online or in person. And then what we'll do is we'll rank, the staff and the board will pull out of the best of the best, so to speak, and then we're hopefully going to have people at the fair during the fair rank and vote on their own, and then the people will actually determine the top. And then there's prizes. There's prize money. You can win $25 or something like that.
Well, I know all the details are on your website, crawfordswcd.org. I said that fast. crawfordswcd.org. It has all the rules and all of everything is on there, and how to get involved with the photo contest. By the way, I want to compliment your website because you have many things on there. Just like, for example, background conservation, cropland assistance, drainage assistance, livestock assistance, pond assistance, things like education, and it goes on and on.
Right.
So it would behoove everybody to go on your website and look that over.
Yeah, we just revamped that here, I'd say 6 months ago. We finished it up.
It's very nice.
Yeah, so there, and it's not just there's different what do you call them? The addresses that you can go onto. So if you go under trees or forestry or woodland management, there are several links on there you can click on that take you other places that have relevant information. And so we tried to make it an easy flow, but you can get that information on backyard stormwater management there, fertility in your backyard, all that stuff, our soil testing program, all the different things that are out there that we have offered. You hopefully can get through that website. So
Well, I'll tell you what, if I can
definitely
get
worth
through
a
it
look.
and I can navigate it, anyone can,
Yes.
because I am not real good with technology.
I agree.
And,
I understand that.
and I
that's-
went through that, and there
Good.
were a lot of great things in there. So if it passed the test for me, I'm
Right.
sure it will be fine with the rest of the
Yes.
public. Probably 95% of the
That's
rest.
probably because I put that together, the idea, and I didn't do it all myself. Obviously, staff at the office helped too. But the idea that I wanted it to be simple and easy
Yes.
and clickable.
And it is.
and
It is
has
very.
to
You
be
can
that
go
way.
right there and do all these stops. All right, Mike Hall. I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Unless you have anything else you'd like
Nope,
to add
that's
this morning.
Good. We'll hit her next month, I guess.
All right, that sounds good to me. Again, my guest has been Mike Hall from the Crawford Soil and Water Conservation District. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Always a pleasure
You're
being
one of the few guests that I could actually set in here and probably do a podcast with a lot of prep, but I take a lot of time to prep for the podcast because I want our public to realize how important this is. And like I said, soil and water conservation is everyone's business, and we need to get serious about it. And it's not that we haven't been, but this is not just a rule issue. This is a city rule. I don't care what it is. Everybody's in the same
Yes.
boat.
Right.
Thanks, Mike, for being
Thank
here.
you.
Appreciate it.